Hey, Mike, what do Kelly Slater and PT have in common?
I don't know. They're both world champs?
Nope, they both own Endless Summer box set.
Oh my God, rad. You guys, you can get it too. The link's in the show notes.
On a softer, slippery, big guns like Mark Fu. Trap jumping like a kangaroo.
Hey everybody, welcome to the QuiverCast, where we chat with surfers from all around the world, from all walks of life, and we get their story. Find us at www.thequivercast.com. I am Mike, your host. Let's get into the show. Hello, everybody. This is Mike here with the QuiverCast, and we got a super special guest, which I'm pretty stoked on, actually. Sashwa Burrous. And did I say it right? Sashwa.
You did. Nice
Stoked.
work.
So, actually, do you know where the name came from?
Where did the name come from? That's
How
a
did you get that
classic
name? It's a
story.
rad name.
It's a long one for sure, but I like to just start off by saying I got it from my hippie parents for sure.
That's rad.
Yeah, it actually came from my dad spent a whole bunch of time down in Mexico. When he was in his 20s, he worked with a guy named Sashwa, and it was actually kind of down in southern Oaxaca near Mazunte in that area.
Okay.
So he spent a good chunk of his life down in Mexico, and through some of those journeys, he met this guy Sashwa, and when that guy passed away, he was like, another Sashwa will be born in 2 years, and here I am. So who knows?
That's awesome. About you real quickly. You're a surfer?
Yep, I would call myself a surfer for sure.
A photographer?
Photographer, filmmaker, cinematographer. Yeah.
And is that different from like a videographer? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, yeah,
It's-
kind of. It's a little bit different, I would say. I like to say to some of my clients and stuff, like videos are things you just see wherever, but
Okay.
cinema is more like film. So a
Yes.
cinematographer is, you could say, like a higher end videographer, if you will.
And you're also a trained fireman or firefighter?
I do carry a wildland firefighter type 2 certification, which is basically just like a basic wildland training that I've done, but I do mostly prescribed firework. So
Wow.
yeah, I work mostly just as like a hobby with a lot of like my neighbors and people in the community here to support putting more good fire on the ground here in Northern California, because we've just had so many crazy issues with it over the years. So it's I want to stay here where I live, and so I want to be involved in that. And yeah,
Okay.
it's a big complicated issue in California, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. It's getting worse. So I'm hearing. Okay. And then is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything else? You seem like you have a lot of cards. You do a lot of stuff.
I do have a lot of cards. I think that's definitely something to note for sure. I mean, yeah, I'm a father now. I'm in my mid 30s, and I now have a 2-year-old and a pregnant wife, and just another kid on the way in a couple months.
Oh,
So,
congratulations. Rad.
yeah, my days of surf trips and surfing every day are, let's just say, not happening as frequently.
Did you grow up in Northern California?
Yeah, in a small town called Sebastopol, like kind of in the country west of Sebastopol. Closest kind of port town is Bodega Bay, so
Okay.
like an hour and a half north of San Francisco. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of energy up here. It's super exposed, super rugged, just, a lot of windy, dumpy beach breaks.
Is that what it is? In such a harsh element, how did you start surfing, and why did you start surfing? It's not like easy beach breaks like Southern California. It's completely different.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't start till I was probably around like 16.
Okay.
And I had a friend I was living with. I grew up on a intentional community, which is kind of just like a nice name for a hippie commune.
Wow. Okay.
Out here west of Sonoma County.
Wow.
Or in West Sonoma County. And one of the guys living there was a buddy of mine named Alexi Brown. He was kind of like an older brother to me, about 15 years older. And he was surfing all the time. Another guy, Gary, who's actually from San Diego, Gary Stevens, they were always going out. And yeah, as a young kid, I was just trying out all the sports. I've been playing soccer since I was like 5. And yeah, they kind of just like, we got to get you out in the ocean. You should try it out. I was super into skateboarding at the time. So yeah, they just drugged me out there and handed me like a tiny little 6'2" on like a gnarly day. And like, we tried it out and I got my ass kicked, of course. Cause yeah, where we live, there's no such thing as like a gentle wave. It's just like Salmon Creek. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like our main spot north of San Francisco. Yeah, it's just super exposed, sharks, wind. It's not the most inviting place to learn how to surf, but just like anything, you try it out, and just being in the ocean itself is beautiful and changes your life in a big way. So yeah, I just kind of kept trying, and I didn't really fully get into it till almost after college. Like I was trying it out, and through college, I went to a college in the East Bay, and so I would go out to Ocean Beach and Pacifica, and there was a few more options for beginners when I was in my early 20s, say a little later to the game than a lot of my friends who started when they were like 5 or 6 as a surfer in SoCal or something.
Real quick, before we get any more into surfing, growing up on a commune, and you said you play soccer, was it like organized soccer or was it like soccer in the field where you're living?
All of the above.
Really?
Yeah. Started off just playing with friends, and then I would join all sorts of small little leagues when I was a kid. West County Soccer, Westco was one of the leagues I played on. Then I played through varsity in high school. It was a big part of my life. And freshman year of high school, I actually lived in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico. So
oh, wow.
My parents moved down there to kind of get me out of the little white bubble of Sonoma County and give us a little more culture and experience. And so we moved down there to check it out. And yeah, I lived there for freshman year of high school. And I tell people I basically just played soccer for that entire year, like every day before and after school. I went to an international school when I was down there. And yeah, there's just all these little parks everywhere. And we would just like set up little goals with like 2 little trash cans or whatever it was and play soccer all day. And that was definitely a formative part of my life, with being out there, moving my body for sure. And then that definitely translated into other sports. And nowadays I'd say surfing is like my main sport and activity for sure.
So let's go back to surfing then. Did you consider yourself an athlete then? And was surfing easy, or was it completely different than?
Surfing's definitely not an easy one to learn. I mean, I also did a lot of snowboarding and definitely a lot of skating. Yeah. So from like when I was 12, my parents split up and I moved in part-time with my dad in town. And so it was kind of perfect timing in a way. I would just get on my skateboard and we could just be gone for 6, 7, 10 hours at a time and just disappear into town and cruise. I'd say some of those board sports definitely translated into surfing, but nothing like it, especially like you can't really learn on a longboard on a lot of these beach breaks up here. And so you kind of just have to try out maybe like a fun board of some kind, just get your ass kicked until you can figure it out. So it was a tough learning curve. And I think that's why it kind of took me a while to kind of get into it. Is like I'd go out like, once every couple of weeks or something for a couple of years. And then eventually, like towards the end of college, when I was in my early 20s, is when I feel like I fully got into it and started surfing Ocean Beach more and doing some surf trips. And yeah, it was a slow progress for me, but for sure fun.
Ocean Beach is super heavy too. Like that's not an easy break.
No, Ocean Beach is not an easy break, but to be honest, it's like way more organized than Salmon Creek and some of the beach breaks we have up north. And so, yeah, I mean, there's tons of currents and all that at Ocean Beach for sure. And nowadays the crowds are just ridiculous. So it's a little bit heinous to surf there on some days, but man, when it comes together, it's a beautiful spot for sure.
In the middle of kind of nowhere of Northern California, how many guys are surfing up there, or gals, or whoever? I
mean, it totally depends on the day, but if you're at like a Salmon
break.
Creek or of Salmon Creek, I'd say is the main break that we can talk about.
Yeah, that's the next question.
It most days I'd say there's 5 to 10 guys.
Oh, really? That many?
One girl maybe. But occasionally, yeah, on a busy weekend, if the sun's out and there's a good swell in the fall or something, just like anywhere, people will come from all over the place and it'll start to get crowded and there's 40 guys, but it's a big beach break, so it kind of spreads them out.
What about some of the sheltered coves and stuff there? Are there some good places?
There's a couple little spots here and there, but
No names.
It's all super fickle, and you're driving a lot. Some local guys call it the Sonoma 500. You're just like, it's not like, oh, I'll go around the corner to the next spot. It's
right.
Like you're going 20 minutes up to the next one, and if that's not happening, you're going another 20 minutes, and a lot of times you just do these kind of large, ridiculous loops. And yeah, there's definitely some waves, but they're all super fickle and they're hard to find, and yeah, there's a lot of sharks and rocks, and so it's not super inviting, but like anywhere in the world, you find your moments, you find your spots to have a good time for sure. But it's definitely a commitment. But I think the payoff for me is just worst case scenario. You're in one of the most beautiful places in the world. Like if you go up the coast from where we live, it's like, even if you're looking for surf, you probably won't find it, but you'll find yourself like hiking along these beautiful bluffs, and like, there's whales out there and dolphins, all sorts of beautiful coastline to explore. And so that's what it's all about for me. It's just like a lot of sports. It's like, I love fishing, but it's not about catching the fish. It's about being out in a beautiful space and engaging with that landscape.
The process of it.
Yeah, for sure.
You're an hour and a half north, you said, of San Francisco area, like in that general area. Is that a completely different world? I mean, San Francisco with millions of people living there.
Yeah.
Do you feel removed?
I mean, I do for sure, but I mean, my dad lives another couple hours north of here, so I feel like that's like the proper country living. Like where we live is like country light these days. There's like more and more people coming up from the Bay Area and buying houses, and it's getting gentrified like so many places. And it's, I'm on 10 acres out in the redwoods, so I'm definitely, you could say, in the country, but it's in the fire world, we call it the WUI, the wildland urban interface. And so it's like you're on the edge of the forest, but you're, I'm 0.4 miles from a small little town, so I can walk down to town or cruise my bike down to town, go to the hardware store and get some food. So yeah, I'm definitely in the country. I'm about 15 minutes from the coast, so it's a nice balance. And what I appreciate about being up here is I can get down to the city and kind of get that fixed if I need it, and go down there for work if I have a job that's down there. But yet, like, my commute to the surf, you could say, is just it's 15 minutes on one of the most beautiful roads in California, and then it ties into Highway 1. It's amazing. There's not a single stop sign between me and the coast, versus when I was in the East Bay, I would like drive over a bridge and through 45 stoplights, and it would take 45 minutes, and then you get to the coast, and then there's a whole bunch of people everywhere. You're just like, this is ridiculous.
Have you experienced like in Southern California surfing? Have you come down here and surf?
To be honest, I haven't actually. I've surfed a good amount in Santa Cruz.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife went to UC Santa Cruz kind of before we.
Oh, rad. Before
we started dating, and I had a lot of friends. I almost went to UC Santa Cruz, ended up not going there. Probably would be a lot better surfer if I did end up going there for sure. So yeah, I've surfed a good amount in that area and kind of on the north end of Santa Cruz a lot, but not a ton in SoCal. I've been down on a couple trips, but to be honest, like, yeah, it's pretty few and far between.
In your environment, in your neighborhood, or I guess it's not really a neighborhood, but in your town, how many guys are actually surfing? Is there a thriving surf community, or are you kind of a standalone?
No, there's definitely a good surf community out here. I mean, it's obviously not as big and popular as Southern California because of the weather, but yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of local surf shops, like Northern Light.
Oh, cool.
Is one of the local surf shops, and I don't know if you know Ed Barbera.
No, I don't, but I've heard of the shop.
He's classic old shaper who grew up down south, I believe, and he has a little shop behind Northern Light. He's got a little studio where he hand makes tons of boards, and so you get everything from like weird wild fish shapes that he hand makes to like his kind of specialty. I'd say what a lot of people love his like big wave guns, because we have just a ton of swell up here. It's like a average day is, I don't know, 5 to 8 foot.
Wow, so crazy.
You need more board up here for sure. And so he's got some beautiful bigger gun shapes. Like I've got a handful of his boards, but most recently I got like a 8.2 bright yellow gun from him. That's just a tank of a board. It's huge, but it's a beautiful I like to call them just functional art pieces. It's like you can buy a machine made board from whoever. Like I have a couple Pizels that I love, but it was designed by somebody, but they're just printed out. If you buy a board from Ed Barbera or one of the local shapers up here, it's one of a kind, super rare. Some of them work, some of them don't, but it's a fun functional art piece, I like to say.
Well, they'll all work in the right conditions, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
But they're wall hangers too. They could be either way, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I have another buddy, Ian DeCaros, and he started Balsa Tribe. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
He's down, I think he started his family's from Ecuador or lives in Ecuador at the moment.
Okay.
But he was making custom boards out of balsa. And so he's got a lot of like beautiful balsa boards, and talk about wall hangers. Those things are just works of art. So get your hands on one of those. Pretty unique creation for sure.
That'd be rad. So are the people that are surfing there, are some of them or most of them transplants? Or are these guys that grew up there like you did, kind of in the neighborhood?
There's a little bit of both for sure. I'd say a lot of local guys. A lot of the guys that I think of locals. I'm 34. I'll be 35 in a bit, but there's a solid crew of locals that are in their like mid 40s who are all super good surfers, and they kind of hold it down in a big way. And then I'd say I'm one of I think of myself as like younger generation, but no, I'm not particularly young at the moment, but it depends on, there's always a younger crew, but there's definitely plenty of locals out here for sure. There's less population, so there's less surfers, but there's not like a huge crowd issue, I'd say, but just like anywhere, you go to certain spots on a certain day and it'll get annoying. It only takes so many people to make one spot crowded and annoying for sure.
How do you guys treat outsiders? Are you guys kind of welcoming? I mean, how does that go?
Depends who you're talking to for sure. There's certain spots that outsiders are definitely not treated well, you could say. But, I think if you're coming up to this area, Salmon Creek's a fair game. Dillon Beach is fair game. Like, you can check some of those spots. You're not going to get hassled by locals. Unless, of course, you're a jerk. You're doing something ridiculous. Yeah. As you start going up north into certain spots, we're an hour and a half from Point Arena up north, and like even me, like I tiptoe into that place for sure because like I'm a filmmaker and photographer, and I don't even touch a camera anywhere north of Salmon Creek. It's like you bring kid up there and try and film, and you're definitely getting yelled at, even though what they're protecting is not this amazing break. It's more just like respect for the area, and nobody wants their surf spots to get blown up. So always a dance. So especially I think it's been interesting for me as growing up in the area, surfing for almost 20 years now in this area. Yet I'm a filmmaker and photographer. I don't really shoot my favorite sport where I live. I'll go other places and I'll film Ocean Beach, for instance, or like some spots in Half Moon Bay. But I definitely don't bring too many cameras out to where I'm at. And also, it's fucking sharky as fuck up here. So swimming around up here is not particularly the smartest thing. And there's just a ton of currents. It's not like swimming around on a gentle point break in SoCal where it's pretty mellow. It's a different world for sure.
Let's lead into your job, or your main job. Is it photography, or is it more of the filming?
These days, I'd say it's mostly film work these days. I do some photography and a lot of projects. I'd say actually most of my projects have elements of both.
Okay.
Yeah, I own and operate a small production company with a couple friends here. It's called Cold Water Collective.
Yes.
And there's 4 of us who run this collective together. We are all freelancers ourselves and kind of created the company to kind of support each other and create a network that could help us hold like larger insurance policies, for instance.
Gotcha.
So that when we take on bigger jobs and bigger clients, we have more to offer than like one person. And I think part of that is just like especially I think photography is can be more of a solo sport. Like the amount of gear you need, like you can just pick up a camera these days and go shoot with no lights, an amazing thing, and get onto the cover of an amazing magazine. Film is just a bigger beast, I'd say, in general. You're always carrying more gear. You're almost always with multiple people. And so through creating our company, we wanted to just support the friends and different collaborators we work with, but also have a name that, like, I don't want to put film by Sashwa Burrous on everything. It's like, that's not fair if there's 10 people who worked on it. And so saying produced by Cold Water Collective feels a little bit better for me to say, yeah, like our whole crew, we made this piece together, because it's a very collaborative process for sure. So we do all sorts of work. We have worked on some surf film stuff. I think most of that has been hired out by specific people for certain jobs or certain projects. We own a pretty fancy water housing made by Salty out of Australia for our red Gemini, or red DMSC2 technical term. So yeah, we have the ability to shoot with like these larger high-end cameras in the water, and also have the skills to be able to swim around and not die. So yeah, we've been working with, I don't know if you know, like Sachi Cunningham on She Chain. She's doing a film about Mavericks. We've been helping her out on a few shoots with that. And
I've heard of her. Yeah. And I've heard of the project, actually.
Yeah, she's unbelievable. She's based in San Francisco, and she'll swim at Mavericks with a camera.
That's
which
crazy.
Is, nobody does that. It's like,
would you do that?
No, I would not do that. Definitely not. So, and she'll swim Ocean Beach on a 15-foot day.
That's
and
crazy.
somehow be able to swim through the currents. Like, you know, I could maybe survive a 10-foot day, but I'm not trying to get out there on those bigger days. And so, yeah, she's got a film, She Changed, that she's been working on for a while. And I've gone out a couple times and shot like some long lens for her on the beach with all the other cameras, which has been super fun. And yeah, I worked on a handful of other projects recently, kind of as a water cinematographer. So
let's talk about that for a second. Were you into that before surfing or after surfing? Getting in the water and shooting?
I'd say it's more, yeah, after. I mean, I started surfing when I was, 16, 17. So yeah. I was surfing before I was actually shooting photos. Then, yeah, got into underwater photography.
Which some of your photos are beautiful. I've seen them. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I actually started doing a lot of it because I've worked with a lot of like salmon restoration projects and different nonprofits, and I've worked on a handful of films all about that. And so it's kind of a similar skill set. And so a lot of the gear that we use for surf photography can be used in that environment as well. So it's been a nice overlap, and that's actually how or why we came up with Cold Water Collective as a name. It's like, it's somewhat of our specialty. Most people who shoot in the water want to be in warm water, and we're fine with throwing on a big ass wetsuit. And my business partner shoots all sorts of cold ass environments. Like, he'll free dive with a camera in the Arctic.
That's nuts.
And like shooting penguins and stuff in like a wetsuit. It's ridiculous. And so there's, it's kind of a niche that we've created for ourselves. And yeah, there's a handful of other guys and girls who are doing it, but it's something we've kind of leaned into. A lot of time in any industry, it's like you have to find the little niches that you kind of are good at. And so that was kind of how our name, we worked on a project up north or did a trip all the way up into Canada. That was actually part of Artificial, that film you had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, great movie.
Through shooting some of the salmon footage from that film, like, we just got super inspired and bought a whole bunch of new kit, kind of created our company inspired by
cold water, kind of, and getting in there.
Yeah, we were up in Chase, BC, in British Columbia. Long story short, we were looking for salmon, and where we live in Northern California, there's some salmon around, but it's like 3% of historic runs. And so they're hard to find. Let's just say there's the little creek behind my house used to have tons of fish, and now we'll have like 20 or 50 fish in the whole creek. And so, there's that's a whole giant conversation in
That is
itself
a whole
of, like,
one, yeah.
salmon restoration. But on that trip up to British Columbia, we went up to a couple of the lakes up there, and I think we did get lucky on timing for sure. But we parked on this beach in the evening. We're like, I wonder if there's any fish here, and kind of heard a few splashing around, and woke up the next morning and just couldn't see anything. But we threw on our surf suits actually with goggles and went out for a free dive, and first dive down, just like swam down like 10 feet just to find like thousands and thousands of fish just swirling around us. And so that trip kind of just was a spark for us, and just super inspired both of us to lean into that type of work. And so we bought that salty housing right after that. So that housing is good for both surf photography and for underwater photography and video for all sorts of things.
You said surf photography and underwater. Which one's harder to shoot? They're completely different beasts, I'm sure.
Yeah, they are definitely different beasts. It's all relative, you can have a mellow day of surfing, but some surf photography, you can literally like stand waist deep in the water with the housing, and you're barely kicking, and you can get some amazing shots with the housing just kind of with a split frame. And so there's days like that, and then there's like what we were talking about, swimming with the camera at Ocean Beach, where you swim for 2 hours and you get 5 shots if you're lucky. And so there's just different levels. They both have their challenges for sure. I mean, with surf stuff, I'd say you have to be in a different type of shape. You got to be able to, one, hold your breath, but more be a really good swimmer, which I'm a decent swimmer. I grew up swimming my whole life, but I'm not like amazing swimmer like some people are. And so I can survive out there, but I'm not catching up with Sachi. She could leave me in the dust for sure.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
But then, we also do some filming on scuba. So we're both me and my buddy Justin are scuba certified. And so, that's a whole other type of filming where you're underwater, but it's less about your breath holds, more about being able to be in the right spot and create slow, beautiful moves throughout the ocean. So yeah, they all have their little nuances and differences, and there's a lot of like technical aspects to underwater, like your camera and everything has to be very dialed, and so there's a ton of issues I should say with shooting in the water, especially with these higher end cameras. Like you would think like a more expensive red camera would be easier to shoot with in the water, but it's actually more difficult because they overheat and they create a ton of fog, and like most of them are manual controls versus like if you put in a little Sony stills camera into a housing and go swim around, it's actually a hell of a lot easier to shoot with.
What about like a spot on the water, like on the lens, like anything ever like that happens? You think you have a rad shot and there's a water droplet or something? All
the time, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a thing. There's a ton of different techniques, and different ports have, generally speaking, you have like a different port for every lens. And so you have your old school fisheye ports, and those have their issues. And then you have nowadays, like a lot of people are shooting with flat ports, which kind of mimic like the front of the lens that's just flat, and you actually like wax those. So those are like technically a dry port, you would say. And so you're trying to keep it dry the whole time, versus a dome port is more of a wet port.
Okay.
If you're not shooting with it, you're actually like holding it down in the water to keep it moist, and then you lift it up and you're encouraging this like film of water in a way. So there's tons of little nuances and techniques, and they all have their looks, and they all kind of change and trend with time. Nowadays, I think a lot of people are shooting flat ports.
Are you going in and out of the water and switching lenses? How does that work out?
It depends on your housing, but it's definitely time consuming, because you got to get out, you got to, walk back to wherever your rig is and change out a port. So it's definitely, some people will just put a zoom lens in, which gives you more flexibility, but there's downsides to that, image quality and speed. But most of the time you kind of just like choose a lens and go out for the hour or two that you're filming or shooting photos. But yeah, occasionally, like if I have a client project and they're trying to tell a whole story, you know, I'll go out for a swim with one lens, get like a shallower depth of field and more certain type of shots, and then I'll switch out, which takes 15 minutes, and then come back into the water with another lens.
So you did something with the ranch, with Kelly Slater's ranch. How'd you get hired for that?
That was a fun project.
Yeah,
that was with Outside Magazine.
Oh, yeah, Outside, okay.
Yeah, I've been shooting and directing pieces for Outside for probably 10 plus years now, and working mostly with their branded content, like kind of marketing side. And so what that means is basically they have like brands that fund stories and then they share them on Outside. And so that one was sponsored by Breitling.
Yeah, Breitling.
And Outer Known. So Breitling watches and Outer Known is Kelly Slater's brand.
Yeah.
Luckily don't live that far. It took like 4 or 5 hours to get down there. And yeah, that was a fun project. Brought on my buddy Adam Warmington, he's an amazing surf photographer and director. He lives here in the Bay Area now. He has shot at Ocean Beach for years, one of the old school cats there. But yeah, we worked on that project together and it was fun for sure. It was a quick trip, but yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to go for a surf. But
that's my question.
Yeah, I know.
It was work.
Yeah, that was a work trip. My buddy Adam gets some time in there from time to time. But
that's right.
Yeah, but I actually haven't been able to surf there, but it was fun to check it out for sure and kind of get a sense of the place. You know, it was a big crazy event when we were there, and so there was a lot going on. But yeah, met Stephanie Gilmore and Kelly and a lot of those surfers. So it was a good good trip for sure. And yeah, I mean, that wave is ridiculous. It's
what did you think of it from the outside? Like, well, not being actually surfing it. Does it look gnarly? It look fun?
Gnarly, definitely not. It's coming from where I live, it's like the most gentle thing ever. It's I go back and forth with it. I mean, I have friends who just rave about it. It's like, oh my God, it's the most amazing thing in the world. I'm somewhere in between. I think it's cool. I would love to go there for sure. But
give it a go.
You know, the price is just outrageous. And so unless you get some special invites, you know, I think the wave pool thing is cool. It has its place for sure. But I don't know. It's a lot of fucking input and water and energy and all that just so somebody can
have fun.
It's a little ridiculous to me, to be honest.
Really? Okay.
But I don't know. I would love to try it. So I'm sure if I was the one getting barreled, I'd maybe be a little more stoked. But
True. Do you guys specialize just in the cold water, even though it's Cold Water Collective? So obviously that's what the sound. And how cold will you go into the water?
I mean, like I said, my business partner, he's been shooting up in the Arctic. He did crazy. 6 months last year.
So what's the temp, the water? It's got to be close to freezing.
I mean, he's literally swimming off of icebergs and shit. It's, you know, if 32 is the freezing point, it's probably 33, 34.
Wow.
And he's got most people use dry suits up there, but he's actually got this like specific custom wetsuit. It's like a free diving suit that he wears. I think it depends on the time. You know, if it's doing a shorter free dive, then he uses that, because you need a wetsuit if you're like diving down to get a certain shot. But if you're just kind of bobbing on the surface, you can wear more of a dry suit, which is definitely better suited for that condition. But I mean, in reality, underwater stuff is probably 20% of our business. We do a lot of documentary type work. Like I said, we work with Outside a lot. So through Outside, we get all sorts of different jobs with different brands. Like we've just shot a series for Under Armour all about running. We worked with Cyrus Sutton on a piece, and the client for that was Go RVing, and so they basically just like gave us these RVs, and we would do trips. And so that was at the beginning of the pandemic, and we met up with Cyrus and did a road trip with him, and it was crazy fucking timing, because it was like right in the first week of the pandemic, like hitting California, and we're like on this shoot together, and like the whole world's like freaking out, and we're just like, give us a couple more days to finish this. But we made the most of it and took the RV on a road trip up north. Kind of went from SoCal up towards our area and had a super fun trip and good to connect with Cyrus again. He's a rad dude, and been working with him on a couple projects since then. So
Cyrus is a former guest on the show. How'd you know him? Did you meet him during this trip, or did you know him beforehand?
I knew him beforehand. So I think the first time we technically met was when he was touring with Island Earth, which is his film he made in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Met super briefly at a screening, and then we like properly connected when we were down in Mexico. My parents live down in Mexico part-time, and so I go to visit them pretty often. He happened to be down there, and so I just hit him up. I'm like, yo, I'm in the same town. I don't know if you remember me, but let's link up. And so we connected down there and went surfing and had a good time down in Mexico. And then through that connection, we just kept linking up and talking, and ended up working on a project called Small Change together. And we did a 3-week road trip from his place up in Washington all the way down to San Diego, filming with all sorts of amazing people like Jay Nelson, and just a whole crew and slew of people all throughout California. And so that was a super fun trip. Yeah. And then in more recent times, we've been both working on films together, but also just hanging out. He's been doing a ton of building, and I grew up building with my dad. And so we've been talking a lot of projects and how to work on the land together in different ways. And so, yeah, a lot of overlap with our hobbies and projects for sure.
Job and hobbies, you guys have a lot in common, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sure when you talked to him, but he's been living up in Washington State.
Yeah, I've been to the house, actually.
Seeing that he's been up there, he's just been on project mode for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to see what he's been building. He turned out to be an amazing builder and created all sorts of beautiful creations up there on his property. Yeah. And that's been a big hobby of mine, is working on the land and building creative structures. And so, yeah, definitely.
So rad. How did you get into shooting in the water? You went to school?
I actually went to school for motion graphics and design. Okay. So I have a bachelor's in design.
Which is what? In layman's terms.
Yeah. Motion graphics is kind of like animation, graphic design, like a lot of, it's kind of like multimedia. And so it's pulling in like video and then like adding in graphics on top of that. And so it was it was a pretty broad program that I went to for college. And through that, I tried out a ton of different stuff. We had photography classes, we had a music video class, then we had a ton of animation classes. And the ones that I kind of excelled in were the ones that were hands-on, like music video. It's like, oh wait, this is fun. Like, we're in a studio, we're being creative, and we're like shooting all this stuff and then bringing it onto the computer. And I learned pretty quickly that the 10, 12, 15-hour days that we were doing on computers in college was like, this is not sustainable for my life and where I'm at. And being a younger hippie kid from Northern California working on giant advertising campaigns, was kind of like the advertising world was kind of where it was leading. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And so right after college, I actually was like, I need some time off the computer. And I bought a 5D and went traveling for 6 months and went to India, Nepal, and Indonesia on a six-month trip. Just kind of just spent all my money, toured around the Himalayas and then into Indonesia, and had an amazing trip. Yeah, I shot a ton of photos and video while I was out there, all pretty casually. But after that trip and after exploring with the camera, I kind of was like, oh, I'm going to see if I can pull this off. Put together a little reel of literally just like beautiful shots from that trip. And sure enough, I got like a little internship, and then that one thing led to another, and kind of started building up my career. And I was leaning more into landscape photography back then, and was super into just being out in wild places and photographing them. But man, everybody was just like, can you do video? Can you do video? And I was like, sure, whatever, I'll try it out. And so, yeah, back then I was doing like some graphic design, like posters and websites and different things, but a lot of people kept just asking for videos. And so I was just shooting all sorts of little videos for people. And yeah, 15 years later, it's my career now. And yeah, it's been good.
And you like it? Sounds like you have a great life. Like,
Yeah,
You're
I do
enjoying what
like
you're
it
doing.
for sure. I would say I'm not like a diehard. Like some people are like so in their craft that it's like,
Yeah.
this is what I do. It's like, that's not me. It's like, yeah, I'm a filmmaker. I'm a photographer, but that's probably 30% of my actual day. Most days, it's like first and foremost, I'm a dad now, so that's my biggest priority. But
Cool.
you know, you got to put food on the table, and
You
so
do. Yeah.
I have to stick with that career for sure. But generally speaking, I do love it as a career. It's super flexible. Like, you know, I'm about to have another kid, and I can basically just say I'm going to take some time off and say no to everything, which financially is hard.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I'm
I
sure.
I have the flexibility to do that. Hopefully, later this summer, I'll jump back into work, and I'll just have to double down to make up for that time off. So, yeah, my dad growing up always had his own businesses, and so I learned kind of. He had like tons of different businesses. It was ridiculous, and so he was always just like trying out different things. And
That's awesome.
yeah, and so I just learned how to like, I don't know, maneuver around and not. My mom was the opposite. She was a midwife and she did home birth midwifery for a long time, but then worked in the hospital for 22 years. So I kind of got a good example of both. And
worlds.
there's benefits to both for sure. I mean, you know, she's got a retirement plan and I'm still figuring out how to save money. It's like, it's that balance for sure. But now that I'm a dad, my priorities have definitely shifted. And although my career is very important, like I'm not flying around the world like I was even 3 years ago. Like I was traveling a ton for work and taking jobs where I'd be gone for about 6 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Nowadays, like I just usually turn those jobs down or hand them off to somebody unless it's like unbelievable and pays really well. It's like my priority is to be closer to home, to be there for my family, and a lot of things to take care of here on the property.
I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
still want to surf as much as possible. And so it's all a balance of life for sure.
Do you think with you growing up in the outdoors and being in Northern California that it helps finding jobs versus like in an urban setting?
Yeah, it definitely helps get certain jobs for sure. So, you know, I'd say most of the film world is, you know, in LA or in
Right.
bigger
New York.
metropolitan hubs. And so there's a lot more money there, and you can make a ton of money by shooting specific, you know, whatever it is, commercials in these places. But as you've probably noticed, a lot of advertising is now in the outdoor space.
Yeah.
And so that's where growing up in a more rural community, you know, I have access to certain locations, and in photography, they always say, shoot what you know. And what I know is the country and farming, and I should say gardening, not farming, but like, yeah, living in a way that's a little more connected to the landscape around you. And so I've tried to lean into that with my work. And so, yeah, you know, I've pitched stories to people like Patagonia and all sorts of different companies. I think I've gotten a few of those just because, yeah, I'm closer to those stories than say a brand sending someone from a city to go shoot someone who's in a rural location. So
That
yeah,
doesn't
there's
relate, really.
yeah, there's definitely some benefits. And yeah, like yesterday, I'm working on this big watershed project called Basins of Relations for a nonprofit across the street. It's a longer story for sure, but I needed to find like water coming through the redwoods and like shoot this whole sequence around water drops, like kind of coming down through the forest.
Okay.
Sure enough, I live in the forest, and I literally was on my deck with my camera yesterday, and I was just like hanging
So
out, and then
sweet.
the light just like blasted through the forest, and I was like, oh, fucking, this is perfect. You know,
Yeah.
tons of people would usually like drive an hour or two to go find that, but I just got lucky, and I was like, holy shit, I can just literally go out on my porch and create beautiful imagery. So there's definitely some benefits, but I also definitely drive to the city pretty often for work because you got to make a living.
Yeah, you do. Do you think you'll ever move or live or stay in amount of time in like an urban setting, or are you just so mindset that where you live, this is your environment you're going to stay in?
I think at this point in my life, I probably won't unless I could see moving to like closer into town.
Okay.
Just like as you start having more and more kids. I mean, hopefully not going to have more than 2, but
Never know.
you never know. The amount of driving and stuff definitely gets a little ridiculous. So I could see like potentially moving a little closer to town, but I don't know if I'm pretty rooted where I'm at for sure. And I feel like I had my college days in the Bay Area, you know, living mostly in the East Bay, and like I lived in like Emeryville, Oakland, Berkeley area.
Yeah, it was super crowded.
Super crowded. I got my city fix, spent a ton of time in San Francisco.
Was it fun at first, or what were your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. It's fun, especially in those days. I mean, I was super into music, and I DJ'd a little bit for when I was younger. And so, yeah, you know, when you're in that mode, it's perfect for sure. But yeah, I think the big question is always like, how do you make a living if you are going to move out of the city? And the fact that I'm able to make a decent enough living and live where I'm at, yeah, it's a nice balance. It's like I can get down to the city. I'm not too far from it, but I also kind of have some space around me. So yeah, I think to answer your question, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, and don't see myself moving anywhere. But
right on.
You never know.
Let's talk about the firefighting card.
Prescribed fire.
Yeah. So what's that about, and why did you decide to get that?
Yeah. So I live like 20 minutes from Santa Rosa, which I'm sure you've heard of. And, you know, 2017, we have the Tubbs fire. Basically every year since then, except for last year, there's just been ridiculous fires in our area, and, you know, thousands of houses burning down in certain ones. And so it's been a big threat to our community in a way. And pretty early on, I just realized that I wanted to, I saw a lot of people in our community leaving, like they see these natural disasters happening and they're like, oh, I got to run from this. I got to leave. And so they would move to wherever to get away from the fires.
From the threat?
Yeah, from the threat. And so I pretty quickly was like, all right, I grew up here in the forest in West Sonoma County. I want to stay here. So if I'm going to live in this fire ecology, then I need to learn how to work with fire. And I've always been kind of a water person, if you will, you know, surfing and swimming and all of that. Yeah. In the last, really in the last 4 years, I've kind of been leaning into the fire world and learning as much as I can about it. And as a photographer, that's kind of my medium to connect. And so I heard about this training, the Wildland Firefighter Type 2 training that this organization Fire Forward was putting on in Santa Rosa. And I asked if I could photograph it, and I went out and was shooting photos. Through it, I just started learning. I was pretty much taking the class in a sense, because I was there listening and snapping some photos here and there. And then sure enough, I signed up for the next one, got my certification, and that group, Fire Forward, is a part of Audubon Canyon Ranch, and they do prescribed fires all throughout Sonoma County. And so I just got more and more involved with them and shooting photos for them. And one thing led to another, and I've both been doing a lot of prescribed fire on my own property.
Oh, really? Cool.
And throughout helping my neighbors, and also photographing both wildfires and prescribed fires for different people. So 2 summers ago, it was just craziness, and I'd end up shooting. I got onto a job with the New York Times out of the Dixie fire, and so I was shooting with them, and then met a woman from Nat Geo, and she hired me one day late. I was like, my contract ends on Saturday, and she's like, cool, come down here and we'll shoot another thing. And so I just jumped onto her project. This is Lindsay Adario, and that was the Caldor fire that came up into South Lake Tahoe. So yeah, it's kind of just now that's been another niche of mine. It's again, if I could give any younger photographers some advice, it's shoot and follow what you're passionate about. And right now my passion is both water, but also now fire. And so I've been leaning into that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, but yet so related to, it's how do you put out a fire? Yeah. You put water on it. And so it's been a good balance for me. And I've been learning a ton, and I'd say specifically prescribed fire is kind of one of the best tools we as humans have to
Really
work with the
Interesting.
landscape to combat wildfire. It's like these forests are going to burn 100% chance they're going to burn. So you're either going to burn them in you could say controlled way or a prescribed way where you're prescribing a certain type of fire, or you're going to let it burn on its own. So super engaging. And I'm working on a series right now with Mystery Ranch, which is a brand out of Bozeman, Montana. And so, yeah, it's been good. It's been a good balance for me to kind of get out of the water and into the smoky, fiery world.
Wow. Who have you worked for? Name some of the people. I know you said Nat Geo and New York Times.
Yeah, all sorts of
many
people. But it's been a long world. But let's see. I've shot stories for Patagonia, Nat Geo. I've done one project with them, so I can't rep it too hard. New York Times, Google, Facebook, USA Today.
Wow.
Danner, Leatherman, Extra Tough, Rivian. I shoot for Pottery Barn Kids, which is like one of my little. I don't tell much people about it, but it's a local company here in the Bay Area, and it pays well, and I can drive down and make some money and come home to my kids.
Rad.
So I think most of us filmmakers and photographers, we have a lot of times you go to a photographer's website and what's on their website is their passion projects. It's
okay,
you want to put out into the world what you're passionate about and the jobs you want to get.
Mm-hmm.
But they probably made their money doing some other shit.
Yeah.
So it's and a lot of the times, I get hit up to do surf projects. Hey, bro, can you come out and shoot this thing? It's a passion project. I have no money. It's I try and make those things happen if I can, but sometimes you just can't pull it off.
No, of course not.
But
do you think that the future is bright in being in your work? I guess you already said it before. They're getting out of that more urban setting and we're going more nature.
Yeah, I think it's tough. It's a tough time to be in. I don't know. It's a balance. In the media world, there is so many new tools and there's so many, everybody can pick up an iPhone.
Right.
And edit a sick little video together.
Yeah.
And post it online and it gets 1 million hits or whatever. So it's there's that whole side of things. But at the same time, there's more and more people consuming media. And so there's more of an audience for it because everyone's watching everything on their phones, for better or worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Budgets are generally getting smaller, especially if you're a stills photographer. It's getting harder and harder to make a solid living. You got AI coming in, which is just making everything crazy.
Wow. So is your game always changing? Do you have to get different equipment or learn something new?
Yeah, equipment's definitely always changing for sure. You just kind of got to stay up on what people are using and what's popular. And, there's so many nuances within that, from lenses to styles of shooting. And, you do your best. I'm not as up to date as a lot of my friends who, like I said, are just super in it every single day.
Yeah.
I do what I can to stay up with it all. But yeah, it's just like a lot of industries, it's changing quickly. Graphic design, what I studied, that'd be a rough one to be getting into right now. Cause it's you have so much technology and stuff that's coming out where you can literally type a piece of code into the internet, make me a poster or a CD cover with a wave and a guy surfing, and they just take a picture of Kelly Slater and or whatever it is, and bam, and in 10 seconds you have 100 versions of your CD cover, and somehow you can use it on your CD. It's that's nuts. So it's a changing world for sure. So you're kind of always adjusting, but all in all, good storytelling is what we're trying to do, and the machines are. I think we're still ahead of the machines on that.
Perfect. Right on. All right, let's shoot back to surfing before we end this. How the waves been up there over this couple rainy months?
Yeah, it's springtime, which is our probably worst season at the moment, or end of the winter. Yeah, the winds start coming up this time of year up here, and so a couple months ago we definitely had some just big old monster beach break days, which was fun for sure. But yeah, it's been a minute. I also just hurt my wrist, so I haven't surfed in probably 2 weeks. But
Wow.
It's been a little rough around here these days. But all in all, it's been I'd say a good fall and winter are our best times to surf up here for sure. But yeah, spring's pretty rough. But well, there's some little moments here and there, like anywhere.
What's the average water temperature up there?
Cold.
Was it 50 or below 50?
It's like 52, I think, is average.
Okay. It's not horrible, but it's cold.
It's cold, it's
cold.
It's
when the weather's cold outside. It's
yeah, so it's like a 5'4" with hoodies and boots for sure.
You wear gloves?
I personally don't wear gloves unless it's just like ridiculous, but a lot of people do. But yeah, generally speaking, if you have a 5'4", you're good. But yeah, I've done some surfing in Alaska, and it's actually the same temperature in the Southeast Alaska where I was surfing as it was here. It's like it was actually 55 degrees in Alaska when I was there in the late fall. Come back home and it was like 50, 52. I was like, something's wrong here. It's colder here in California than it is up there, but it just depends how the currents are swinging.
Yeah. Well, there's probably not a lot of temperature difference between you and Santa Cruz either. Just a few degrees, probably.
It's definitely a little bit warmer there. I think most people wear like a 4.3 down there. So our average is, I'd say 52. There's maybe 58, something like that.
Does it warm up in the summer at all? Or does it stay?
The summer can actually be pretty cold because you get a lot of wind and upwelling. So some of the coldest times I've had are actually like early summer when you still have a lot of spring winds.
Yeah.
And that brings a lot of fresh upwelling, which is actually really cold.
Yeah.
And then you're surfing a south swell in Northern California. And so you're sitting there for 20 minutes waiting for a set, not doing anything. So yeah, it's confusing, but it's like June, July can actually be one of the colder times, but early fall is actually probably the warmest, like September or something like that. You actually get like these weird offshore, it's like kind of the same time. I always joke, like if it's fire weather, which is like an offshore wind.
Yeah, that's good.
Like if there's like a fire warning, surf's probably good.
Yeah, but then brings upwelling if it's offshore usually. Sometimes, or at least here it does. So thank you so much for coming on the QuiverCast.
Yeah, shout out to my buddy Perry Gershow, filmmaker around here. And then my buddy Kenny Hurtado. He just moved. He was living here in Sonoma County. He shoots for like Surfer's Journal and a whole bunch of, he used to shoot a ton of like Surfer Mag and different spots. Yeah, lots of good friends who are, I'd say, deeper into the surf world than I am, and maybe I'll connect you and you can chat with some of them for sure.
That'd be excellent. Yeah, thank you. Right on. All right, everybody. This is Mike and Sashwa Burrous. We're out of here. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, man.
100 foot out choke food. 100 racks on a surf dude. Slippery, big guns like Mark Food. Trap jumping like a kangaroo. 100 foot out choke food. 100 racks on a surf dude. Slippery, big guns like Mark Food. Trap jumping like a kangaroo. You know we don't fuck with no kooks. Your boo on my didgeridoo. They calling me Duke. I'm stacking the loot. I'm ripping your chick in the coop. She grabbing a hold of my leggy. They jelly, they Gucci my weddy. The friends of Giuseppe, the chain is so heavy. She think that I'm charging the Eddie. 100 foot out choke food. 100 racks on a surf dude. Slippery, big guns like Mark Food. Trap jumping like a kangaroo. 100 foot out choke food. 100 racks on a surf dude. Slippery, big guns like Mark Food. Trap jumping like a kangaroo. Surf trap, I'm stacking that money. Cash. Four shots, a red Ferrari. He starts to calling me Dundee. Diamonds a surfing McFlurry. She want me to teach her to surf. Splash. I'm pulling up, ripping the verse. I'm leaving these kooks in the hearse. They get moved 100 foot on their head, they get work. 100 foot out choke food. 100 racks on a surf dude. Slippery, big guns like Mark Food. Trap jumping like a kangaroo. 100 foot out choke food. 100 racks on a surf dude. Slippery, big guns like Mark Food. Trap jumping like a kangaroo. You know we don't fuck with no kooks. You know we don't fuck with no kooks. You calling me Duke, I'm stacking the loot. I'm ripping your chick in the coop. You know we don't fuck with no kooks. You know we don't fuck with no kooks. They calling me Duke, I'm stacking the loot. I'm ripping your chick in the coop.
Hey, you guys, Endless Summer box set. This thing is legit. It's authentic, numbered certificate in it. It has a 5-frame film strip from the original print. You will literally own a piece of history. It has a specially minted bronze medallion. Dude, that thing's sick. Okay, there's so much more here. Go to the show notes. There's a link on there. Go check this piece of history out. This thing's rad. Seriously. Smithsonian American History Museum has it. It took 4 years of research with 3.5 in production, all hand assembled. This thing's rad. So much to this awesome box set. Remastered DVD, sharper images than the original film, but dude, this thing's so sick. Link in the show notes.